Welcome back, or if you're new here, hi, I'm Alex. I create content that covers all things nerdy, and if the algorithm brought you this far, then you must be new to D&D and wondering, what character should I create? So if you're thinking about jumping into Dungeons & Dragons and you're new to it all, picking a class can feel overwhelming, especially if you're eyeing those mechanics-heavy options. What you really want are classes that are easy to pick up, fun, and engaging. And when people choose their classes in D&D, it comes down to a mix of personal preference. Some people might go for a class that fits their character's backstory or concept, while others might be more focused on damage output or the types of spells available. But when it comes down to it, most new players aren't even thinking about those things when they're creating their first character, because unlike people who have played for a while, the ins and outs of each class, new players don't really have that kind of background knowledge. So when you sit down and you want to play D&D for the first time, you're not actually worrying about the intricacies of wizard schools, of magic. Instead, you're probably just asking yourself questions like, what's the difference between a paladin and a cleric? Why does the barbarian have more hit points than everybody else? And should I be following a specific team composition? Even though D&D is packed with resources, it's actually quite overwhelming to new players, and it's quite tough to learn, especially if you're not familiar with tabletop games. Thankfully, there's a range of classes that gives people so many opportunities and plenty of options to explore. And from my perspective, I think it's probably best to focus on classes that are simpler mechanically. When someone is crafting their first character, I wouldn't recommend going for classes that have loads of abilities like warlocks, artificers, or even sorcerers. These classes require a solid understanding of spellcasting, and they can make the whole process feel quite complicated, and it's a lot more complex than just choose a spell, cast a spell. I think it's quite a good idea for new players to start with a martial class before diving into spellcasters, because this way you kind of get the hang of things like armor class, modifiers to hit, and damage rolls before tackling those more complex concepts like DCs and concentration checks. As a player of a few years now, I've seen new players tend to have a lot more fun when they aren't juggling a million different abilities at once. Nobody likes feeling useless and forgetting about an ability that could have changed the game, and this can end up making you feel super frustrated. But hey, they're just my thoughts. If, as a new player, you're really excited about playing a wizard or a sorcerer, then just go for it. The best part of D&D is that everybody just gets to play what they want, and new players at the end of the day are looking for guidance and support and not pressure. If we start with quite a classic starter class, the Fighter. When you ask the D&D community what class new players should start with, the Fighter usually comes up, and honestly, it's a solid choice. The Fighter is super beginner friendly with mechanics that are easy to understand. Most of its archetypes focus on boosting the character's attack actions, which is straightforward. Plus, features like Action Surge are powerful yet simple, and let's not forget Indomitable and Second Wind, which act like safety nets if a player makes a misstep. Some veterans might call it basic, especially after trying out more complex classes like Druids or Artificers, but the Fighter is a fantastic introduction for newcomers. It helps teach the system basics while still letting players feel cool, even if they make a few mistakes along the way. And the character possibilities with the Fighter are endless. You can create anything from a noble knight to a street fighter with a stick. This freedom lets players dive into designing their character's backstory and personality, which is a huge bonus. We then move on to the Barbarian. It's a solid foundation. The Barbarian class is another excellent choice for beginners. It's pretty easy to learn, mechanically light, and lets new players jump into martial combat without worrying about too much about dying. If someone wants to play a tough, muscle-bound character like the Barbarian, it's definitely the way to go. What I love about Barbarians over Fighters, it's all about resource management. New players often don't realise how important Action Surge is, especially since Fighters only get one use of it until level 17. If they use it too soon and then they regret it, they're kind of stuck waiting to take a short rest in order to get it back. On the flip side, Barbarians start with 2 uses of Rage at level 1. This extra resource means that if they use their Rage and then they end up getting scared by something like a spider, they won't feel like they wasted it. Rage is a fantastic ability for beginners. Much like Action Surge, it's straightforward and it encourages players to experiment with it. Just like Fighters, Barbarians offer a ton of character creation options. Whether it's a brawny Viking or a battle-hardened general, their Rage is as versatile as the bloodstains on their weapon. Now then, I had to sort of debate with myself between monk and ranger, because out of all of the classes in D&D, picking a third recommendation was kind of tough for me. I was torn between the monk and the ranger. While I think monks are a great choice, the ranger brings these unique benefits that other classes don't. The biggest draw for the ranger, and I know I said that the best beginner classes focus on martial combat, but if someone wants to enjoy both martial and spellcasting, then the ranger is a fantastic option. It has abilities like Favoured Enemy and Natural Explorer. New players don't have to manage too much, allowing them to learn other skills without feeling overwhelmed. Plus, the updated 5.5e Ranger streamlined things even further, letting beginners focus on spellcasting while still playing a martial class. Spellcasting can be pretty intimidating for newcomers since there's often so much information thrown at them. Any DM knows how frustrating it can be to have to explain spell slots to a new player. I'm sorry. But thankfully the Ranger's gradual spellcasting progression allows them to explore D&D's magical possibilities while still learning the ropes of their class. It's a step up in difficulty, but if a player is dedicated, mastering the Ranger can help them understand practically every other class down the line. Okay, let's be honest, a lot of new players just want to play spellcasters, and I can't blame them. My favourite class, as I've mentioned lots of times before, is Warlock. I love Hexblade Warlock, especially with Pact of the Blade. Spellcasters provide a gameplay experience martial classes just can't match. If a new player is eager to be a full spellcaster, then I totally recommend Wizards. Wizards are probably the easiest spellcasting class to learn mechanically, and they allow players to interact with the world in creative ways. Sure, a barbarian can leap across a gap, but a wizard can conjure a disc to float over with no effort. Playing a wizard is a quick and straightforward way for new players to grasp the ins and outs of spellcasting. They don't have to worry about complex class abilities or juggling stats, so they can focus on getting the hang of those sometimes tricky magic rules. And don't sweat it. Once they become seasoned players, they might still mix up some spell components, so make sure you're ready for that. It's kind of a whistle-stop tour to sort of the top classes that I would recommend. It can be very overwhelming. The more you read, the more down a rabbit hole you end up, and it can end up quite confusing. So hopefully, just a very compact explanation should help you, particularly getting the ball rolling in which character you want to just explore that a little bit more. As always, thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to nag you one more time to do all those things you need to do to support my tiny channel, and I hope to catch you in the next video.